Ariana Brooks was 3 steps from the altar when the church doors exploded open. A gray-bearded stranger in a leather vest walked straight toward her, ignoring the gasps and shocked whispers, and leaned in close enough to whisper 4 words that shattered everything. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your dad." Her perfect fiancé's face went from charming to cold in an instant, and suddenly Ariana realized the biggest mistake of her life wasn't running away from her wedding. It was almost saying "I do" to a monster hiding behind a philanthropist's smile, and the only person who could save her was an ex-biker with secrets about her murdered father and a criminal empire that had been watching her long before she ever knew their name. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. Ariana Brooks stood in the bridal suite, staring at herself in the full-length mirror. The ivory gown hugged her frame perfectly, the delicate beading catching the afternoon light streaming through the stained glass windows. At 28 years old, she should have felt nothing but joy. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But something felt wrong. She couldn't explain it. Everything appeared perfect on the surface. The flowers were arranged beautifully throughout the historic church. The guest list included everyone who mattered. Her fiancé, Evan Whitlock, was everything a woman could want. Wealthy, charming, generous with his philanthropy work. He'd swept into her life 18 months ago like a fairy tale prince, and now here she was, minutes away from becoming his wife. So why did her stomach feel like it was filled with stones? "You ready, girl?" Tessa appeared in the doorway, her burgundy bridesmaid dress swishing as she walked. Tessa had been Ariana's best friend since college, the sister she never had. But today, even Tessa looked strained, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I think so," Ariana said, smoothing down the front of her dress one more time. Her hands were trembling slightly. Tessa came closer, adjusting Ariana's veil with careful fingers. "You look absolutely beautiful," she whispered. Then, so quietly Ariana almost missed it, she added, "You sure about this?" Ariana turned sharply. "What do you mean?" But Tessa had already stepped back, that practiced smile back in place. "Nothing. Wedding jitters. Come on, they're waiting for you." The walk to the church entrance felt surreal, like moving through water. Ariana could hear the organ playing inside, could see the backs of 200 guests through the slightly open doors. Her mother was already seated in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Evan's side of the church was packed with wealthy associates, business partners, people from his charitable foundation. The coordinator gave her the signal. The doors opened wider. The wedding march began. Ariana took her first step down the aisle, her bouquet of white roses and baby's breath clutched tightly in her hands. Every eye turned toward her. She tried to smile, tried to look like the radiant bride she was supposed to be, but that heaviness in her chest only grew heavier. Evan stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his sandy hair combed back, his smile practiced and bright. He was handsome in that polished, magazine cover way. Clean cut, respectable, perfect. But as Ariana walked closer, she noticed something. His smile didn't match his eyes. There was tension in the way he held his jaw, a tightness in his shoulders. His hands, clasped in front of him, kept clenching and unclenching. She glanced to her right. 2 of Evan's groomsmen were whispering urgently to each other near the second pew. One of them checked his watch twice in the span of 10 seconds. On her left, a bridesmaid she barely knew kept pulling out her phone, glancing at the screen, then shoving it back into her clutch. The organ music suddenly stuttered, missing a note before continuing. The organist looked flustered, her fingers stumbling over the keys. Something was happening. Ariana could feel it in the air, thick and oppressive like humidity before a thunderstorm. She reached the altar. Evan extended his hand. His palm was sweating. "You look beautiful," he murmured, but his voice sounded hollow. The officiant, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, opened his book. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to—" The church doors slammed open. The sound echoed through the sanctuary like a gunshot. Every head whipped around. The organist's hands crashed onto the keys in a discordant mess before she stopped playing entirely. Ariana turned, her heart suddenly pounding. A man stood in the entrance, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the doorway. He was tall, broad-shouldered, probably in his mid-40s. As he stepped forward into the church, details became clearer. Gray streaked through his dark beard. Tattoos covered his forearms, disappearing under the sleeves of a worn leather vest. The vest bore patches, faded symbols Ariana didn't recognize, but that spoke of a life lived on the edges of society. He looked dangerous. Everything about him screamed that he didn't belong here, in this pristine church filled with society's elite. But it was his eyes that caught Ariana's attention. They weren't cruel or wild. They were focused, intense, and filled with something that looked like urgency. He walked down the aisle slowly, his boots heavy on the polished floor. Every step was deliberate. He scanned the crowd, his gaze moving from face to face as if looking for someone specific. "Excuse me," the officiant stammered. "Sir, this is a private ceremony." The man ignored him completely. Ariana felt Evan's grip tighten painfully on her hand. She looked up at her fiancé and barely recognized the expression on his face. Gone was the practice charm. His eyes had gone cold. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping. His lips pressed into a thin line. It wasn't confusion on Evan's face. It was recognition and fear. The stranger kept walking, kept coming closer. Guests began rising from their seats, uncertain murmuring filling the space where music had been moments before. One of Evan's groomsmen moved toward the aisle, as if to intercept the intruder. The man held up one hand without even looking at him. "Don't." Something in his tone made the groomsman freeze. Then the stranger's eyes locked onto Ariana. He walked straight toward her, ignoring the gasps, ignoring Evan's men flanking the altar, ignoring everything except her. He stopped just a few feet away. Up close, Ariana could see the weathering on his face, the scars on his knuckles, the way his leather vest had seen years of hardware. Everything about him spoke of violence and danger. But his eyes remained steady, almost gentle, as they met hers. "I need to speak with you," he said quietly. "Who the hell are you?" Evan's voice cut through the church, sharp and commanding. "Someone get him out of here. Now." Two men in dark suits appeared from the side doors. Security Evan had insisted on hiring, something Ariana had thought was overkill at the time. They moved toward the stranger. He didn't even glance at them. Instead, he leaned in closer to Ariana, close enough that only she could hear his next words. "You're in danger," he whispered, his voice rough but urgent. "Pretend I'm your dad. Trust me, don't marry that man." Ariana's fingers went numb. Her bouquet nearly slipped from her hands. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" she breathed. Behind her, she heard Evan take a step forward. "Get away from her right now." But the stranger's eyes never left Ariana's face. There was something in them, a desperate sincerity that made her lungs feel tight. "You have to trust me," he said again, barely audible. The security guards were almost on him now. Guests were standing, some moving toward the exits, others pulling out phones. The whole ceremony had descended into chaos. Ariana opened her mouth, unsure what she was going to say, when the stranger suddenly raised his voice. "You take one step closer to her," he said, addressing Evan directly, "and I tell everyone what you did." The church fell silent. Evan had gone completely still. The color had drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like a statue. Then his expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're clearly disturbed. Someone call the police." "Try me," the stranger said calmly. "I've got nothing left to lose, Whitlock. But you? You've got everything riding on this little performance." He gestured at the church, the guests, the elaborate setup. "Wonder what all these nice people would think if they knew the truth." "This is insane," Evan said, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "Ariana, step away from him. He's dangerous." The stranger finally looked at Evan then, and Ariana saw something pass between them, something dark and knowing. "The only dangerous person in this church," the stranger said quietly, "is standing right there in that expensive tuxedo." Ariana's mind was spinning. Nothing made sense. This man, This stranger who looked like he'd ridden straight out of some biker gang was telling her not to marry Evan, was claiming she was in danger, was threatening to expose something. And Evan, her sweet, charitable, perfect Evan, looked like he wanted to kill someone. Ariana, the officiant, said nervously, trying to salvage something from this disaster. Perhaps we should take a brief pause, clear the church, sort this out. But Ariana couldn't move, couldn't think. Her heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. The security guards had stopped advancing, clearly uncertain. One of them was speaking urgently into a radio. More people were pulling out phones now, recording everything. The stranger leaned in one more time, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Walk out with me," he said. "If I'm wrong, you'll never see me again. If I'm right." He paused, his gray eyes boring into hers. "This wedding will cost you your life." Ariana stood frozen in her wedding gown, bouquet trembling in her hands, every eye in the church on her. This man was either completely insane or telling her a truth she wasn't ready to hear. She looked at Evan, really looked at him, and for the first time, she let herself see the cracks in the facade. The way his charm always felt rehearsed. The way he'd isolated her from friends over the past year, so gradually she hadn't noticed. The way he'd insisted on controlling every aspect of the wedding, down to the guest list. The way he'd never actually answered when she asked about his family's business. "Ariana." Evan's voice was softer now, pleading. "Baby, don't listen to him. You know me. You love me. We're getting married. Come here." But something in her had shifted, some instinct she'd been suppressing for months. She looked back at the stranger. "Who are you?" "My name is Damon Cade," he said, "and I knew your father." Ariana's breath caught. Her father had died 8 years ago, when she was 20. A heart attack, they'd said. Sudden and unexpected. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Pastor Malcolm Brooks," Damon said. "Community church on West Side. Kint man. Help a lot of people who'd lost their way." His voice softened. "He helped me, and before he died, he asked me to watch over you if anything ever happened." Tears pricked Ariana's eyes. How did this stranger know her father? How did he know things that felt too specific to be lies? "This is ridiculous," Evan said, louder now. "Ariana, he's manipulating you, playing on your emotions. Can't you see that?" Could she? Everything felt upside down. Damon extended his hand, palm up. Not grabbing, not forcing, just offering. "Your choice," he said quietly. "But choose fast, because those guards are about to get brave, and I'd rather not hurt anyone in a church." Ariana looked at his hand. Scarred knuckles, calluses, a hand that had seen violence. Then she looked at Evan's hand, still reaching for her. Manicured nails, soft skin, a hand that had never known a hard day's work. Which one should she trust? Her voice came out as barely a whisper, but it was steady. "Okay." The single word hung in the air like a blade. Ariana watched shock ripple through the church, gasps from the guests, her mother's cry of confusion, the officiant's mouth dropping open. But it was Evan's reaction that confirmed everything. His mask shattered completely. The charming smile, the gentle demeanor, everything she'd fallen in love with vanished in an instant. His face twisted with rage. "Lock the doors," he snapped, his voice cutting through the sanctuary with a hardness Ariana had never heard before. "Nobody leaves, especially her." The security guards moved immediately, splitting up to cover the exits. Several guests shrieked, others pulled back, suddenly understanding this wasn't just a wedding day disaster. It was something darker. Damon positioned himself between Ariana and Evan, his body language shifting into something protective and dangerous all at once. "Not how I wanted this to go, but here we are. You have no idea what you've done," Evan said, taking a step down from the altar. His voice was low now, controlled, but seething with barely restrained fury. "Ariana, you're making the biggest mistake of your life." "Maybe," Ariana said, her voice shaking but determined. "But at least it's my mistake to make." She saw something flicker in Tessa's face then. Relief, maybe, or validation. Her best friend gave the smallest nod, so subtle that if Ariana hadn't been looking directly at her, she would have missed it. Tessa knew something, had known something. This way, Damon said quietly, taking Ariana's elbow gently. There's a side exit. How do you? Scouted the church an hour before the ceremony. Old habits. He guided her toward the left side of the sanctuary, away from the main doors where security was gathering. Evan's voice boomed after them. Stop them. Now. Two of the suited guards moved to intercept, positioning themselves in front of the side door Damon was heading toward. They were big men, clearly hired for their intimidating presence. Damon didn't slow down. Last chance to move, he said calmly. One of the guards reached for Damon's shoulder. What happened next was so fast Ariana almost missed it. Damon's hand shot up, deflecting the grab, then drove forward into the man's solar plexus. The guard doubled over, wheezing. The second guard swung a fist, but Damon ducked under it, swept the man's legs, and sent him crashing into a pew. The whole encounter lasted maybe 5 seconds. Military, Ariana breathed. Something like that, Damon muttered, pushing open the side door. Come on. They emerged into the late afternoon sunlight. The church had been built on a small hill, surrounded by oak trees, and a parking lot full of expensive cars. Damon led her quickly down a stone pathway, away from the main entrance. Someone tipped me off, he said as they half walked, half ran. Someone who cares about you, who's been watching Evan for a while now. Ariana thought of Tessa's subtle nod, her worried glances all morning, the way she'd asked if Ariana was sure. Tessa, smart girl, your friend. Knew something was wrong, but couldn't prove it alone. She found me 3 weeks ago. Behind them, Ariana heard shouting. The main church doors burst open. More of Evan's security poured out, along with several guests in various states of panic and confusion. There! Someone yelled, pointing at them. Damon picked up the pace, pulling Ariana toward a section of the parking lot she hadn't noticed before, tucked behind a row of hedges where a weathered but powerful-looking motorcycle waited. Black and chrome, built for speed and endurance. He grabbed a helmet from the seat and handed it to her. Ever ridden before? No, Ariana said, her heart pounding. Her wedding dress was already getting tangled around her legs. Hold on tight and lean with me on turns. Don't fight the movement. He swung his leg over the bike and fired up the engine. It roared to life with a deep, throaty growl. Ariana looked back. For security guards were running toward them, maybe 50 yards away. Behind them, she could see Evan standing in the church doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. She hiked up her dress, climbed onto the bike behind Damon, and wrapped her arms around his waist. The leather of his vest was warm from the sun, worn soft with age. Hold tighter than that, Damon said. She squeezed harder, pressing herself against his back. The motorcycle surged forward just as the first guard reached them. Ariana felt the man's fingers brush her veil, but then they were gone, speeding across the parking lot and onto the road beyond. The wind whipped at her dress, her veil flying off and tumbling away behind them. She watched it disappear in the side mirror, a white flag of surrender to a life she was leaving behind. They merged onto a highway, Damon weaving expertly through traffic. Ariana had never moved this fast before, never felt this exposed and vulnerable. Every instinct screamed at her to jump off, to go back, to try to understand what was happening. But another instinct, deeper, older, told her to hold on. After 20 minutes of hard riding, Damon took an exit and pulled into a rest stop. He parked the bike behind a semi-truck, out of sight from the main road, and killed the engine. Ariana climbed off on shaking legs. Her beautiful wedding dress was dusty and torn at the hem. Her carefully styled hair had come loose from its pins. She looked like a disaster. She started laughing. She couldn't help it. Hysterical, overwhelmed laughter that bordered on crying. Damon said, steadying her with a hand on her shoulder. Breathe. You're okay. I just ran out on my wedding, Ariana said between laughs and gasps. With a complete stranger. On a motorcycle. In my wedding dress. When you put it that way, it does sound pretty crazy, Damon admitted. Ariana's laughter died. She looked up at him. This man with a gray-streaked beard and hard eyes who just turned her entire life upside down. Tell me this was the right choice. Tell me I didn't just destroy everything for nothing. Damon's expression softened slightly. Let me show you something. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out his phone. After tapping the screen a few times, he held it out to her. Ariana took it. On the screen was a photo, grainy, clearly taken from a distance. It showed Evan standing outside an industrial building, talking to two men in suits. The timestamp said it was taken 6 months ago. "Recognize anyone?" Damon asked. Ariana squinted at the photo. "That's Evan, but I don't know the other man. The one on the left is Marcus Trenton, convicted of human trafficking in 2015, released on a technicality. The one on the right is David Callahan, suspected of laundering money for several crime syndicates. Neither man is someone a legitimate philanthropist should be having private meetings with." Ariana's stomach dropped. "Where did you get this?" "Your father." She looked up sharply. "What?" "Not the photo itself, but the information. Your father spent the last 2 years of his life investigating the Whitlock family. He knew what they were, what they did. He was building a case, collecting evidence." Damon's voice grew quieter. "They found out. And 3 days before he planned to go public, he died of a heart attack." The world seemed to tilt. Ariana grabbed the motorcycle for support. No, the doctors said it was natural. He had a heart condition that nobody knew about until the autopsy," Damon said gently. "Convenient timing, don't you think?" Ariana felt like she might throw up. Her father, her kind, generous father who'd run a small community church and helped anyone who needed it, who'd taught her to see the good in people, to trust, to love openly. Why didn't anyone investigate? They did. Sort of. But the Whitlocks have connections. Money buys silence, and silence buries truth. Damon took his phone back, pocketing it. "Your father asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. I tried. For a while. But I was fighting my own demons back then. By the time I got clean and tried to reconnect, you'd already met Evan." Ariana's mind was spinning. A conversation came back to her suddenly, something she'd overheard weeks ago when Evan thought she was asleep. He'd been on the phone in his study, voice low. "We need to keep her clean," he'd said. "No associations that raise flags. The timeline is tight enough as it is." At the time, she'd thought he was talking about business, some deal he was worried about. Now those words took on a sinister new meaning. "He was planning something," she whispered. "Something involving me." "Not just planning," Damon said. "Executing. The wedding was the final piece. Once you were married, you'd be legally tied to him. Controllable. He could use you, your background, your reputation, as a shield while he continued his family's business." "What business?" Ariana's voice cracked. "What do they do?" Damon was quiet for a moment, his jaw working. "Then a lot of things. Most of them ugly. Your father uncovered trafficking routes, money laundering, blackmail, political manipulation. The Whitlocks built their empire on broken lives and buried bodies." Ariana sank to the ground, her dress pooling around her like a deflated cloud. She'd been dating Evan for 18 months, living with him for 6. She'd introduced him to her mother, her friends. She'd worn his ring and planned a future with him. How had she been so blind? "I loved him," she said softly, tears finally spilling over. "Or I thought I did." Damon crouched beside her, careful not to crowd her space. "He's good at what he does, making people trust him, making them feel special. It's how men like him survive, by being whatever people need them to be." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Ariana asked, looking up at him through her tears. "How do I know you're not the dangerous one?" It was a fair question, a necessary one. Damon reached into another pocket and pulled something out. He placed it carefully in Ariana's palm. It was a pendant, small, silver, with a cross engraved on the front. She recognized it immediately. Her breath caught. "Dad's," she whispered. "He never took this off. They said they couldn't find it after he died." "He gave it to me the last time we met," Damon said quietly. "Told me if anything happened to him, to keep it safe. Said someday I might need to prove to his daughter that I knew him, that I could be trusted." Ariana closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling the familiar weight of it. She remembered playing with it as a child, her father lifting her up so she could see the tiny engraving on the back. Faith, hope, love. Fresh tears came, but different this time. Not tears of confusion or fear, but of grief finally allowed to surface. "I couldn't save your father," Damon said, his voice rough with emotion. I was too broken back then, too lost in my own darkness. He pulled me out of it, gave me a reason to keep living, and I failed him when he needed me most. He looked away, jaw clenched. But I won't fail you, he continued. Not this time. Whatever it takes, I'm going to make sure Evan Whitlock doesn't destroy you the way his family destroyed your father. Ariana sat there in her ruined wedding dress, holding her father's pendant, while the sun began to set behind the rest stop. Everything she thought she knew had been stripped away. Her fiancé was a monster. Her father had been murdered, and her only ally was a stranger with a violent past and ghosts in his eyes. But somehow, sitting there on the pavement next to Damon Cade, she felt safer than she had in months, maybe even years. What happens now? She asked. Damon stood, offering his hand. Now, we disappear for a while. Evan's going to be looking for you, and he's not the type to accept rejection quietly. As if summoning the devil by speaking his name, Damon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. What? Ariana asked, getting to her feet. Message from my contact. Evan just went on camera outside the church. He's telling everyone you were kidnapped by a dangerous criminal, that he's coordinating with police to get you back safely. Damon's lip curled in disgust, playing the devastated fiancé. Smart. He's turning the story around, Ariana said, understanding dawning, making himself the victim, and you the damsel who needs rescuing. Damon pocketed his phone, which means every cop in the state is going to be looking for us. We need to move. Ariana looked down at herself. I'm not exactly dressed for running. Despite everything, Damon's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. There's a Walmart about 2 miles from here. Think you can hold on for one more ride? 20 minutes later, Ariana was pulling on jeans and a simple t-shirt in a Walmart bathroom while Damon stood guard outside. She'd also grabbed sneakers, a jacket, and a baseball cap. When she emerged, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The bride was gone. Someone else stood in her place, someone who was going to have to learn how to survive in a world she never knew existed. Damon was waiting by the exit, holding 2 burner phones he'd just purchased. Here, don't call anyone you know. Evan will have people monitoring your friends and family. My mom, Ariana said, panic rising. She'll be terrified. Your friend Tessa will take care of her. They talked about this possibility. Your mom's in the loop, enough to know you're safe at least. The fact that people had been planning her escape without her knowledge should have felt violating. Instead, it felt like proof that someone had been watching out for her while she'd been too blind to see the danger. They walked out into the parking lot. The sky was dark now, stars beginning to appear overhead. Somewhere out there, Evan was orchestrating a manhunt. Her face was probably all over the news. Where are we going? Ariana asked as they approached the motorcycle. Somewhere he won't think to look, Damon said. And then we figure out our next move. Which is? Damon looked at her, his gray eyes reflecting the parking lot lights. We finish what your father started. We take down Evan Whitlock and everyone in his family who thinks they're untouchable. Ow! Same way your father tried. Evidence. Truth. Exposure. He handed her the helmet. But first, we keep you alive long enough to see it through. Ariana put on the helmet, climbed onto the motorcycle behind Damon, and wrapped her arms around his waist again. This time felt different than the panicked escape from a church. This time felt like a choice to fight back instead of run away. As they pulled out of the parking lot and merged onto the dark highway, Ariana whispered into the wind. What was I about to marry? But she already knew the answer. She'd been about to marry a monster wearing a charming mask. A man who'd seen her not as a person, but as a possession. A final piece in whatever sick game his family had been playing for years. The road stretched out ahead of them, dark and uncertain. But for the first time in months, Ariana felt like she could breathe. The motorcycle's engine quieted as Damon pulled into the parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of a town Ariana didn't recognize. The neon sign flickered weakly, advertising hourly rates and free cable. It was the kind of place people came to when they didn't want to be found, which made it perfect. We're staying here, Ariana asked, climbing off the bike. Her legs were stiff from hours of riding. The sky had turned fully dark, stars scattered across it like broken glass. Just for tonight, Damon said, pulling off his helmet. I booked it under a fake name this morning. Cash only. No cameras in the parking lot. He grabbed a small duffel bag from the bike storage compartment. Tomorrow we move again. Inside the room, the air smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. The carpet was worn, the furniture dated, but it was clean enough. 2 beds, a small bathroom, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. Damon immediately checked the locks, tested the window, and positioned a chair where he could see both the door and the parking lot. Old habits from a dangerous life. Ariana sat on the edge of one bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the escape was fading, leaving behind the crushing weight of reality. She'd run away from her wedding, left her entire life behind. And for what? The word of a man she'd known for less than 6 hours? I know what you're thinking, Damon said quietly, setting his duffel bag down. You're wondering if you made a mistake. If I'm lying. If maybe Evan really does love you, and this is all some misunderstanding. Ariana looked up at him. Can you blame me? No, he said simply. You'd be stupid not to question this. Questioning things might keep you alive. He pulled a chair over and sat across from her, keeping a respectful distance. So let me tell you everything. No more secrets. No more half-truths. You deserve to know exactly what you were walking into. Ariana wrapped her arms around herself. Okay, start from the beginning. Damon leaned back, his weathered face catching the harsh light from the lamp. 20 years ago, I was a different person. Younger, angrier. I fell in with a motorcycle club, the kind that runs drugs, guns, whatever pays. I thought I was building brotherhood. Turns out I was just building a prison. His voice was rough with old pain. I became the right-hand enforcer for the club president. Did things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably didn't deserve it. Told myself it was loyalty, survival, the code. But really, I was just too broken to care. What changed? Ariana asked softly. Your father. Damon's expression softened. About 12 years ago, I was at my lowest point. Lost, addicted, empty. I had a gun in my hand and every intention of using it. Then this man, this pastor I'd never met, found me in an alley behind his church. He could have called the cops. Should have. Instead, he sat down next to me and talked. Ariana felt tears prick her eyes. That sounded exactly like her father. He didn't preach at me, Damon continued. Didn't judge. Just talked about second chances. About how the worst thing we've done doesn't have to define what we do next. He got me into rehab, visited me every week. And when I got out, he helped me find legitimate work. Helped me walk away from the club. That's when you learned about the Whitlocks. Damon nodded. Your father had been investigating them for years, but he kept it quiet. He knew they were dangerous. Then about 8 years ago, he discovered something that changed everything. The motorcycle club I'd been part of, we'd been moving cargo for the Whitlocks without knowing it. Weapons, people, things that destroyed lives. Ariana's stomach turned. Human trafficking? Among other things. The Whitlock family built their fortune on suffering. They used legitimate businesses, charities, foundations, shipping companies as fronts. They'd move people across state lines, sell them to whoever paid. Young women mostly. Vulnerable. Desperate. His voice went cold. Evan's father, Richard Whitlock, ran the operation. Evan was being groomed to take over. The room felt too small suddenly. Ariana stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the motel parking lot was quiet except for a few cars scattered across the faded lines. My father found evidence, she asked. Boxes of it. Financial records. Photos. Testimonies from victims who'd escaped. He spent 2 years building an airtight case. He was going to take it to the FBI. Damon's jaw clenched. 3 days before his meeting, he died. Heart attack, the coroner said. But your father was healthy. Ran 3 miles every morning. No history of heart problems. Ariana pressed her forehead against the cool glass. They killed him. I can't prove it. But yeah, I think they did. She turned back to face him. Why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you finish what he started? Shame flickered across Damon's face. Because I fell apart. Your father's death destroyed me. I blamed myself for not being there, for not protecting him. I started drinking again. By the time I got clean, years had passed. The evidence was gone. Evan's people had cleaned out your father's office. And you He paused. You'd moved on with your life. I figured maybe it was better that way. Maybe you'd be safe if you stayed in the dark. But then I met Evan. Then you met Evan, Damon agreed heavily. And when I found out, when I realized who you were dating, I knew I had to act. Because I understood what was happening. What do you mean? Damon stood and walked to his duffel bag. He pulled out a battered laptop and opened it on the small table. After typing for a moment, he turned the screen toward Ariana. This is Evan's pattern, his family's pattern. The screen showed a series of photos, young women, all smiling in professional headshots. Beneath each photo was a name and a short description. Jennifer Caldwell, dated Evan for 2 years. Disappeared 6 months after they broke up. Police found no leads. Sarah Thompson, engaged to Evan for 8 months. Called off the wedding. 2 weeks later, she was found dead in her apartment. Ruled a suicide, though friends said she wasn't depressed. Maria Fernandez, dated Evan briefly. Went to the police claiming he was dangerous. Recanted her statement a week later. Last seen 3 years ago. Ariana felt sick. How many? That I know of? 7 women over the last decade. Maybe more before that. Damon's voice was grim. Evan has a type. Smart, kind, respected in their communities. Women who make him look good. Women with reputations that could shield his family's activities. And if they get suspicious, if they try to leave, they disappear or die, always in ways that don't raise too many questions. Ariana sank back onto the bed, her legs giving out. She remembered how Evan had pursued her, how he'd seemed so interested in her volunteer work, her community connections, her spotless background, how he'd gradually isolated her from friends who asked too many questions, how he'd insisted on managing their finances, their social calendar, everything. She thought it was love, devotion. It was control. Why me specifically? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why did he choose me? Damon closed the laptop carefully. I think he knows exactly who you are, who your father was. I think marrying you was his way of winning, of proving he could take everything your father tried to protect. The cruelty of it made Ariana's throat tight. Evan hadn't just wanted a wife. He'd wanted to corrupt the daughter of the man who'd tried to stop him. There's something else, Damon said quietly. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I didn't want to show you this yet, but you need to see it. He handed her the paper. It was a photocopy of a handwritten note. Ariana recognized her father's handwriting immediately. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Damon, protect Ariana. She doesn't know what I've been investigating. Keep her away from the Whitlocks, no matter what. They'll try to use her against me. They'll try to break everything I've built. Don't let them. You owe me nothing, but I'm asking anyway. Say my daughter. Ariana's hands shook. Her father had known. He'd known the Whitlocks would come after her eventually. He left this with his lawyer, Damon said, to be given to me if anything happened to him. But the lawyer was paid off by Evan's family. I didn't get it until 2 years ago, when a man had a crisis of conscience on his deathbed. 2 years ago, Ariana repeated. And you waited until my wedding day? I tried earlier, Damon said, frustration creeping into his voice. I sent you letters. Tried to call, but Evan had you locked down tight. Your phone number changed. Your address was unlisted. Every letter I sent came back unopened. Today was my last chance. The one day I knew where you'd be, surrounded by witnesses. The one day Evan couldn't make you disappear quietly. Ariana looked at the note again, at her father's handwriting, at the love and fear contained in those few sentences. He'd tried to protect her even from beyond the grave, and she'd almost married his murderer. The enormity of it crashed over her. She started crying, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere she couldn't control. All the grief she'd never properly processed for her father, all the fear and betrayal she felt now, all the anger at herself for being so blind. Damon didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He just sat quietly nearby, giving her space to break apart. When the tears finally slowed, Ariana wiped her face with her sleeve. What do we do now? Now, Damon said, we do what your father couldn't. We find the evidence. We expose the Whitlocks. And we make sure Evan never hurts anyone again. Do you know where the evidence is? Some of it. Your father had backups in places Evan's people wouldn't think to look. I've spent 2 years tracking down his hiding spots. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. "I've got financial records, testimonies, photos. But I need more. I need the kind of evidence that can't be ignored or explained away." Ariana straightened, wiping the last of her tears. "Then let's find it." Damon studied her face. "You understand what this means? Evan won't stop looking for you. He'll use every resource he has. He'll turn your friends, your family, everyone against you. I know. People might die. You might die. I know," Ariana said again, her voice stronger. "But if I hide, Evan wins. If I run away and stay silent, my father died for nothing. And Evan just keeps destroying lives." She looked Damon in the eye. "I won't let that happen." For the first time since they'd met, Damon smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. "Your father would be proud." "I hope so," Ariana whispered. Damon's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression darkened immediately. "What?" Ariana asked. "Message from someone called Ghost. Old contact from my club days. He's warning me that Evan hired professional mercenaries." Damon looked up. "Not just security, actual military contractors. They're being told to bring you back alive, but there's no guarantee of that once they find us." "How long do we have?" "Not long. Evan's putting up money, a lot of it. Every bounty hunter and hired gun between here and the coast will be looking for us by morning." Ariana's brief moment of courage wavered. "Then what do we do?" Damon stood, already packing his duffel. "We move now, stay ahead of them, and we find the rest of your father's evidence before Evan finds us." "Where?" "Your father had a safety deposit box at a bank 3 states away. He told me about it once, made me memorize the details in case something happened. That's where he kept the most damaging evidence, the stuff that could take down the entire Whitlock operation. Can we get to it? If we leave now and don't stop, we might have a 12-hour head start." Damon zipped up his bag. "But it's going to be dangerous. Evan will have people watching banks, highways, anywhere we might go." Ariana grabbed the jacket she'd bought at Walmart. "Then we better not get caught." As they walked out of the motel room, Ariana took one last look at the space. Just hours ago, she'd been standing in a church in a wedding dress, ready to promise her life to a monster. Now she was running for her life with an ex-biker, hunting for evidence to expose a criminal empire. Her father's pendant hung around her neck, tucked safely beneath her shirt. She touched it briefly, drawing strength from the metal. "I won't fail you, Dad," she whispered. "I promise." The hours blurred together as Damon pushed the motorcycle hard through the night, sticking to back roads and avoiding highways where cameras might catch them. Ariana clung to his back, her muscles aching, her mind racing faster than the engine beneath them. Somewhere behind them, Evan's mercenaries were mobilizing. Somewhere ahead, her father's evidence waited. And somewhere in between, they had to stay alive long enough to matter. They stopped once at a gas station just before dawn. Damon filled the tank while Ariana went inside to use the bathroom. When she looked at herself in the cracked mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. No muck-up, hair tangled from the helmet, dark circles under her eyes. But there was something else too, a hardness that hadn't been there yesterday, a determination. She splashed water on her face and walked back outside. Damon was waiting by the bike, scanning the parking lot with the practiced eye of someone used to watching for threats. "See anything?" Ariana asked. "Not yet, but they're coming." He handed her a protein bar and a bottle of water. "Eat fast. We need to keep moving." As Ariana ate, she noticed Damon watching the road with increasing tension. "What is it?" "Black SUV passed by twice while you were inside. Same vehicle. Tinted windows." His jaw tightened. "Could be nothing. Could be them. So what do we do?" "We don't find out." Damon threw his leg over the bike. "Come on." They'd barely made it 2 miles when Ariana glanced in the side mirror and saw it. The black SUV accelerating toward them. "Damon," she said, her voice tight. "I see it." He opened the throttle, the motorcycle surging forward. The SUV kept pace, closing the distance. They were on a rural highway now, farmland stretching out on both sides. No traffic, no weaknesses, nowhere to hide. "Hold on tight," Damon shouted over the wind. He veered suddenly onto a side road, gravel spraying as they took the turn at high speed. The SUV followed, its heavy frame sliding slightly before the driver corrected. Damon navigated a series of turns through farmland, pushing the bike to its limits. The SUV stayed with them, relentless. Then Ariana saw it. A small town ahead, buildings clustered around a main street. "Fire alarm," Damon shouted. "When we stop, pull the nearest fire alarm. Create chaos." "What?" "Trust me." They skidded into the town center. Damon jumped off the bike, pulling Ariana with him toward a two-story building that looked like it might be a library or community center. The SUV was seconds behind them. Ariana spotted the red fire alarm box mounted on the wall just inside the entrance. Without hesitating, she yanked the handle down. Immediately, a piercing shriek filled the air. Lights began flashing. Within seconds, people were streaming out of buildings, confused and alarmed. "This way," Damon grabbed her hand, pulling her into the growing crowd. The chaos worked perfectly. Within minutes, the small town's main street was packed with people evacuating buildings, volunteer firefighters responding, cars blocking the road. The black SUV sat trapped in the confusion, unable to move forward or spot them in the crowd. Damon led Ariana through an alley behind the buildings, emerged on a parallel street, and found an old pickup truck with keys in the ignition. He hesitated for only a second before opening the door. "We're stealing a truck?" Ariana whispered. "Borrowing," Damon said. "I'll send money to the owner later. Right now, we need to disappear." He looked at her. "You okay with this?" Ariana thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Yes. They drove out of town on a different road, leaving the motorcycle and the chaos behind. In the rearview mirror, Ariana could see the black SUV still trapped in the mess they created. "That was quick thinking," Damon said, glancing at her. "The fire alarm. You told me to do it." "Yeah, but you didn't hesitate. Didn't freeze. That takes guts." Ariana looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly, but she'd acted, made a decision. Save them, maybe. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a flicker of something that might have been pride. They ditched the pickup truck 50 miles later, finding a small bus station where they could blend in with other travelers. Damon bought 2 tickets with cash, heading east toward where her father's safety deposit box waited. On the bus, Ariana finally had time to check the burner phone Damon had given her. She'd been avoiding it, afraid of what she might see. The screen lit up with a flood of messages from unknown numbers, people Evan must have reached out to, asking them to contact Ariana if they heard from her. Most were worried. Some were angry. A few clearly thought she'd been brainwashed or kidnapped. And she saw something that made her blood run cold. A message from an old social media account she'd shared with Tessa in college. One they'd used for silly inside jokes and coded messages during boring classes. The message was simple. "Remember Mrs. Patterson's class? The one where we always sat in the back." It seemed innocuous, but Ariana knew exactly what it meant. Mrs. Patterson had been their toughest professor. Sitting in the back had been their code for staying under the radar when things got difficult. Tessa was warning her. "They're watching the people closest to you." Ariana showed the message to Damon. He read it and nodded grimly. "Smart friend you have. She's telling you not to contact family or anyone else. Evan's monitoring them." "My mother," Ariana said, worry clutching at her chest. "Is she safe?" "For now. Evan needs her as leverage. As long as you're missing, he'll keep her close, use her to try to draw you out. If he hurts her, he loses that advantage." It was cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Hours later, they arrived in a city neither of them had been to before. Damon led them to an apartment building in a run-down neighborhood, climbing 3 flights of stairs to an unmarked door. He knocked. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. The door opened to reveal a small, wiry person with purple hair and about 6 piercings in each ear. They looked Ariana up and down with sharp, assessing eyes. "You're the one causing all this trouble?" they asked. "This is Switch," Damon said. "Best hacker I know." "Switch, this is Ariana. Heard about you," Switch said, stepping aside to let them in. "The runaway bride who broke the internet. Evan Whitlock's making you famous." The apartment was small, but crammed with computer equipment. Multiple monitors glowed in the dim light, displaying streams of data Ariana couldn't begin to understand. "What have you found?" Damon asked. Switch settled into their chair, fingers already flying across a keyboard. "More than you're going to like. Evan's family has been busier than we thought." They pulled up a file. "I've been digging into offshore accounts linked to the Whitlock Foundation. Found something interesting." The screen filled with bank statements, transaction records, and corporate documents. "These accounts," Switch said, highlighting several. "They're receiving regular payments from what appear to be legitimate charities. But the money's being funneled to dummy corporations. From there, it disappears, but not before matching up with reports of missing women from the same geographic areas." Ariana felt sick. They're using charity work as cover for trafficking? "It's genius, in a completely evil way," Switch admitted. "Whitlock Foundation does relief work in impoverished areas, natural disaster zones, refugee camps, places where people are vulnerable and desperate. They offer help, jobs, transportation. But some of those people never make it to where they're supposed to go." "How many?" Ariana whispered. "Hundreds, maybe thousands over the years." Switch pulled up more files. "And here's the really messed up part. They've been doing this for generations. Evan's grandfather started it. His father expanded it. Evan's just carrying on the family business." Damon's fists clenched. "Can you prove this?" "With what I've got. Maybe. But it will be messy. Lots of room for lawyers to create doubt. Claim the connections are coincidental." Switch looked at him. "You need something more direct. Something that can't be explained away." "The safety deposit box," Damon said. Ariana's father said he had video evidence. Testimony from survivors. Things that put faces and names to the crimes. "That would do it," Switch agreed. "Where's the box?" "First National Bank, 3 hours from here. But we can't just walk in. Evan will have it watched." Switch grinned. "That's where I come in. Give me an hour, and I can create enough digital noise to make security think there's a system glitch. Cameras go fuzzy, alarm system gets confused. Not much time, but enough for you to get in and out." "Can you really do that?" Ariana asked. "Honey, I once made the FBI's database think it was a recipe website for 3 hours. A small-town bank? Please." Despite everything, Ariana almost smiled. While Switch worked, Damon showed Ariana how to spot surveillance, how to change her appearance with simple adjustments, how to move through crowds without drawing attention. Skills he'd learned in his old life, now being passed on to help her survive. "Why are you doing this?" Ariana asked during a quiet moment. "You could have walked away, left me to figure this out on my own. Why risk your life?" Damon was quiet for a long moment. "Because your father saw something in me worth saving when nobody else did. Because I've spent 12 years trying to be the man he believed I could be. And because—" He met her eyes. "Because you remind me that there are still people in this world worth protecting." Before Ariana could respond, Switch called out, "Got something you need to see." They gathered around the computer. Switch pulled up security footage, grainy but clear enough to make out faces. "This is from outside your father's church, the week before he died," Switch said. The footage showed Ariana's father walking to his car. A man approached him, well-dressed, confident. Even in the poor-quality video, Ariana recognized him immediately. "Richard Whitlock, Evan's father. Can you get audio?" Damon asked. "Working on it." Switch typed rapidly. "Okay, got it. It's rough, but listen." Richard Whitlock's voice came through, distorted but understandable. "Pastor Brooks, I hear you've been asking questions about my family." Her father's response was calm. "I've been documenting truth, Mr. Whitlock. What you choose to call it is up to you. Documentation can be dangerous. People get hurt over much less." "Is that a threat?" "It's friendly advice from someone who cares about the community." A pause. "Think about your daughter, Pastor. Think about what happens if you make enemies." The footage ended. Ariana felt like she'd been punched. They'd threatened her even then, used her as leverage against her own father. "There's more," Switch said quietly. They pulled up another file. "Medical records from your father's autopsy. I had to dig deep for these, but look at this note." The coroner had written, "Unusual heart damage consistent with certain toxins. However, no tox screen ordered by family. Natural causes determined." "They poisoned him," Ariana said, her voice hollow. "Looks like it," Switch confirmed. and made sure no one looked too close. The Whitlocks have people everywhere, coroners, cops, judges. They've been buying protection for decades. Damon stood abruptly, pacing. All the more reason we need that safety deposit box. We need evidence so overwhelming that even their bought protection can't ignore it. I'll have the bank system compromised by tomorrow morning, Switch said. You'll have a 10-minute window, maybe 15. Get in, get what you need, get out. And then, Ariana asked. Then we go public with everything, Damon said. News outlets, social media, FBI field offices. We flood every channel at once so they can't suppress it all. They'll come after us, Ariana said. Harder than before. Yeah, Damon agreed. They will. Ariana looked at the screens surrounding them, at the evidence of her father's murder, at the proof of countless lives destroyed by the Whitlock family. She thought about Evan's charming smile, his practiced concern, the way he'd manipulated her for over a year. She thought about all the women before her who hadn't escaped. Good, she said firmly. Let them come. My father spent years building this case. He died for it. I'm not letting that be for nothing. Switch raised an eyebrow at Damon. She's tougher than she looks. Yeah, Damon said, something like respect in his voice. She is. That night, sleeping on Switch's couch with Damon, keeping watch by the window, Ariana had a dream about her father. He was standing in his church office, organizing papers with that careful precision he'd always had. Dad, she said in the dream, I'm going to finish what you started. He looked up and smiled, that warm, gentle smile she'd missed so much. I know, sweetheart. You always were stronger than you thought. I am scared. Good. That means you understand the stakes. He walked over and placed his hand on her shoulder. She could almost feel the weight of it. But scared doesn't mean defeated. Scared just means you're brave enough to keep going anyway. When she woke, dawn was breaking through Switch's windows. Damon was still at his post, eyes red from lack of sleep, but alert. Today's the day, he said quietly. Yeah, Ariana replied, sitting up. Today we get the evidence. You ready? Ariana touched her father's pendant beneath her shirt, feeling its familiar weight. I'm ready. Switch emerged from the bedroom, laptop in hand. Bank opens in 2 hours. I'll start the system interference at exactly 9:15. That's when you go in. What about Evan's people? Ariana asked. Won't they be watching the bank? Probably, Switch said. But I got something for that too. They handed Ariana a small device. Facial recognition scrambler. Clips to your collar. It doesn't make you invisible, but it messes with digital cameras enough that facial recognition software gets confused. Won't fool human eyes, but it'll help. Damon checked his watch. We should move into position. As they prepared to leave, Switch caught Ariana's arm. Hey, your dad sounds like he was a good man. Give him hell. I will, Ariana promised. The bank was in a quiet part of town, nestled between a coffee shop and a law office. Damon and Ariana watched from across the street, sitting in a borrowed car that Switch had acquired the night before. See the guy in the blue jacket? Damon said, gesturing subtly. Been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, watching the bank in trance. One of Evan's? Probably. There'll be more we can't see. He checked his phone. Switch's interference starts in 3 minutes. That's when Blue Jacket will get a call telling him to check something elsewhere. We go in the second he moves. Ariana's heart was pounding. Her palms were sweating. But her voice was steady when she said, What if we're caught? Then we fight, Damon said simply. And if we can't fight, we run. And if we can't run, he looked at her. Then we make sure what we found gets out anyway. Comforting. Truth isn't always comforting. Damon's phone buzzed. A message from Switch, Showtime. Across the street, the man in the blue jacket pulled out his phone, answered, then turned and walked quickly away from the bank entrance. Now, Damon said. They crossed the street at a normal pace, not running, not drawing attention. Just two people going to the bank on a Friday morning. Inside, the lobby was quiet. A few customers at teller windows. A security guard by the door who barely glanced at them. Ariana kept her head down, the scrambler device clipped to her jacket collar. Damon walked straight to the safety deposit desk. A young woman looked up with a professional smile. Help you. Box 237, Damon said, placing a key on the counter. Name's Malcolm Brooks. The woman checked her computer, then looked confused. Sir, our system is showing some kind of error. Let me just. Take your time, Damon said easily. We're not in a hurry. The woman kept trying to access the system, getting more flustered by the minute. Perfect. The confusion gave them cover. Finally, she grabbed a physical logbook. Okay, box 237, Brooks. I'll need a CID. Damon produced a driver's license. Ariana recognized the name as one her father had used for his undercover work. And the key. He placed it on the counter. One moment, the woman led them to the vault room, unlocked the safety deposit section, and used Damon's key to open box 237. She pulled out a long metal box and placed it on a private table. Take your time. Press the button when you're finished. She left, closing the door behind her. Ariana's hands shook as Damon opened the box. Inside were three things: a thick envelope, a USB drive, and a small video camera. Your father thought of everything, Damon murmured, picking up the envelope first. Inside were dozens of documents, witness statements, photographs of Whitlock family members with known criminals, financial records tracing money from legitimate charities to criminal operations. Years of careful investigation, all preserved. The USB drive was labeled in her father's handwriting, evidence. Video testimony. Keep safe. And the video camera. Damon pressed play on the small screen. Her father's face appeared, looking tired but determined. Ariana, he said, his recorded voice making her eyes sting with tears. If you're seeing this, the Whitlocks have discovered the truth. I am sorry, sweetheart. I try to keep you out of this. I try to stop them before they could touch you. He took a breath. Everything you need is here. Testimony from survivors. Financial proof of the trafficking operation. Evidence of murder, bribery, corruption at every level. It's all here. Another pause, and his eyes grew soft. I know you're scared. I know this is more than anyone should have to carry. But you're stronger than you think. You always have been. You got that from your mother. Assad smile. Finish this, Ariana. Expose them. Make sure they can't hurt anyone else. The video ended. Ariana wiped her eyes quickly, focusing on the task. They loaded everything into a backpack Damon had brought, making sure nothing was left behind. Time to go, Damon said, checking his watch. We've got maybe 5 minutes before Switch's interference ends and the system comes back online. They pressed the button for the clerk, who returned to secure the empty box. As they walked back through the lobby, Ariana noticed the security guard was now talking urgently into a radio. Walk normal, Damon murmured. Almost there. They were 10 feet from the door when it burst open. Ryland Cross stepped through, flanked by 2 other men. All 3 were armed. Going somewhere? Ryland asked, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. Ariana's heart stopped. They were trapped. The moment stretched impossibly long. Ryland Cross stood in the bank entrance, his cold eyes assessing them like a predator measuring prey. Behind him, his 2 associates fanned out, blocking any escape route. The few customers in the lobby had gone completely silent, sensing danger. Damon's hand moved slowly toward his jacket. Ariana knew he carried a weapon. She'd seen it when they'd stopped at the motel. But 3 armed men against 1? The math didn't work. Don't, Ryland said calmly. You draw people die. Innocent people. That what you want, Cade? Damon's hand stopped. His jaw clenched, but he raised both hands slowly, showing he wasn't a threat. Smart, Ryland said. He looked at Ariana, and something almost like sympathy crossed his face. Miss Brooks, Mr. Whitlock is very worried about you. Asked me personally to bring you home safely. I'm not going anywhere with you, Ariana said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I don't think you understand the situation. You've been manipulated by a dangerous criminal. Mr. Whitlock just wants to help you. Cut it, Damon interrupted. She knows who Evan really is. What he is. You could drop the concerned fiancé routine. Ryland's expression hardened. Then we do this the hard way. He gestured to his men, who started moving forward. The security guard was frozen by the door, clearly out of his depth. The bank clerk had ducked behind her desk. Damon's body tensed, ready to fight even though the odds were terrible. Ariana's mind raced. They had seconds before this turned violent. Seconds before innocent people got hurt. Seconds before they lost everything her father had died protecting. The backpack with the evidence was slung over Damon's shoulder. If Rylan took it, game over. Then Ariana saw it, the fire alarm on the wall, just 10 feet to her left. She didn't think. She just moved. Sprinting toward the wall, she yanked the alarm handle down with everything she had. The piercing shriek filled the bank immediately. Lights began flashing. An automated voice announced the evacuation protocol. Chaos erupted. Customers screamed and ran for the doors. The bank clerk emerged from behind her desk, shouting about proper evacuation procedures. The security guard moved to help elderly customers. Rylan's men hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden pandemonium. "Move!" Damon grabbed Ariana's hand and pulled her toward a side emergency exit she hadn't noticed before. They burst through the door into an alley behind the bank. Behind them, she could hear Rylan shouting orders to his men over the alarm. Damon pulled her around a corner, then another, navigating the maze of back alleys with practiced ease. They emerged on a different street where an older woman was just getting into a sedan. "Excuse me," Damon said, his voice urgent but not threatening. "I need to borrow your car. Emergency. I'll bring it back, I promise." The woman took one look at their desperate faces and did something Ariana would never forget. She handed Damon the keys. "Be safe," she said simply. They jumped in and Damon drove, keeping to side streets until they were miles away from the bank. Only then did he pull over behind an abandoned warehouse to catch their breath. "That was the second time you've saved us with a fire alarm," he said, managing a slight smile despite the tension. "It worked before," Ariana said, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "I figured. You figured right. Quick thinking. Your father would be proud." Ariana looked down at the backpack between them. "We got it. We actually got the evidence. Yeah, now we just have to stay alive long enough to use it." Damon pulled out his phone and texted Switch. "Package secured. Need extraction." The response came immediately. "Already tracking you. Head to the address I'm sending." "Safe house." "Well, safer than where you are." As Damon drove to the location Switch provided, Ariana's phone buzzed. She'd been avoiding looking at it, but curiosity won. She pulled it out. The screen was flooded with notifications. News alerts. Social media mentions. Her face was everywhere. She opened one news article and immediately wished she hadn't. "Kidnapped bride. Family pleads for safe return." The article featured Evan looking devastated, standing next to Ariana's mother, who was crying into a handkerchief. Evan's statement was perfectly crafted. "I just want Ariana home safe. Whatever she thinks she knows, whatever lies she's been told, none of it matters. I love her. I forgive her. Please, Ariana, come home." "He's got my mother," Ariana whispered, horror rising in her throat. Damon glanced at the phone. His expression darkened. Switch said Evan would try to control the narrative, make himself look like the victim. "But my mom, she looks terrified. What if he hurts her?" "He won't. Not yet. She's too valuable as leverage." Damon's voice was firm but gentle. "Evan needs you to see your mother suffering, so you'll turn yourself in. The minute you do that, the minute you're under his control, that's when real danger starts." Ariana forced herself to breathe. Tessa had warned her. They're watching the people closest to you. Her mother was being used as bait, and as much as it killed her, she couldn't take it. "We expose him," she said, steel entering her voice. "We release the evidence and end this. It's the only way to keep her safe." They arrived at Switch's safe house, actually a basement apartment beneath a tattoo parlor in a rough part of the city. Switch was waiting with 3 computer monitors already running. "Let me see what you got," Switch said, taking the backpack. They spent the next several hours going through everything. The documents were damning. Financial records showing millions flowing from the Whitlock Foundation to shell corporations. Photographs of Evan and his father meeting with known traffickers. Witness statements from women who'd escaped, detailing how they'd been recruited through charity programs, promised jobs or education, then transported across state lines and sold. But it was the video testimony that hit hardest. Ariana watched as woman after woman appeared on screen, telling their stories. Some are missing teeth. Others had scars. All of them had the same haunted look in their eyes. The Whitlock Foundation offered me a job in their overseas program, one woman said, her voice flat with trauma. They said I'd be helping refugee children. Instead, they sold me to a brothel in Eastern Europe. It took me 3 years to escape. Another woman, Richard Whitlock himself, came to the shelter where I was staying. So kind, so generous. Offered to pay for my education. I was 18 and desperate. He personally drove me to what I thought was a job interview. I didn't see daylight again for 6 months. Story after story. Nightmare after nightmare. Ariana felt sick. This was what her father had discovered. This was what he died trying to stop. This is enough, Switch said finally. This is more than enough to bury them. Financial crimes, trafficking, conspiracy, murder. The Whitlocks won't be able to buy their way out of this. Then we release it, Ariana said. Tonight. Right now. Hold on, Damon said. He pulled her aside, his expression serious. Once we do this, there's no going back. Evan will know exactly where the information came from. He'll come after us with everything he has. And he won't be trying to bring you back alive anymore. He'll be trying to silence you permanently. I know. Do you? Because this isn't just about you and me anymore. Switch is involved. Your friend Tessa. Anyone who's helped us becomes a target. Ariana looked at the monitors displaying her father's evidence. Years of work. Years of risk. He'd paid for this with his life. If we don't release it, those women's stories stay hidden. Evan keeps trafficking people. Keeps destroying lives. Keeps winning. She met Damon's eyes. My father didn't raise me to play it safe. He raised me to do what's right, no matter the cost. Damon studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, let's finish this. Switch's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm uploading everything to multiple secure servers. Then I'm going to simultaneously release it to every major news outlet, law enforcement database, and social media platform I can access. They'll try to suppress it, but there's too much coming from too many sources at once. Something will stick. How long? Damon asked. Give me an hour to set it up properly. Then it's done. That hour felt like the longest of Ariana's life. She paced the small apartment, unable to sit still. Damon checked and rechecked his weapon, his phone, their escape routes. Finally, Switch looked up. Ready. On your word. Ariana thought about her father, about his gentle voice and strong hands, about the way he'd always believed people could change, could be better, about how that belief had gotten him killed. Do it, she said. Switch hit enter. For several minutes, nothing happened. The three of them sat in tense silence, watching news websites, social media feeds, law enforcement channels. Then, like dominoes falling, it began. The first news outlet to pick up the story was a small independent journalist blog, then a local TV station, then another. Within 20 minutes, the story had spread across social media like wildfire. Breaking. Philanthropist Evan Whitlock linked to international trafficking ring. Documents revealed decades of Whitlock family crimes. Runaway bride was actually escaping criminal operation. Switch pulled up screen after screen, showing the story exploding across every platform. The evidence was being shared, downloaded, analyzed. People were reading the witness testimonies, seeing the financial records, watching the videos. They can't stop this, Switch said with satisfaction. It's everywhere. Even if they take down one site, 10 more have already copied it. Damon's phone rang. He answered it cautiously. Yeah, it's Ghost. The voice on the other end was gruff, urgent. Brother, you just kicked the biggest hornet's nest I've ever seen. The Whitlocks are mobilizing everything. And I mean everything. Word on the street is they're offering $500,000 for your head. Both of you. We knew this was coming, Damon said. No, you don't understand. They're not trying to capture you anymore. They've got mercenaries, former military, even some cops they've got on payroll. Shoot on site orders. They want you dead before you can testify or release anything else. Little late for that. We already released everything. A pause. Then they just want you dead for revenge. Watch yourself. The call ended. We need to move, Damon said, already grabbing the backpack. Now. Where? Ariana asked. Anywhere but here. Switch, you need to disappear too. They'll trace the upload back to you eventually. Way ahead of you, Switch said, already shutting down systems. I've got a place they'll never find. But you two, you're the faces of this story now. Every bounty hunter and criminal in 3 states knows what you look like. They emerge from the basement to find the street strangely quiet. Too quiet. I don't like this, Damon murmured, his hand moving to his weapon. A car turned onto the street, a black sedan with tinted windows. Then another, then a third, blocking both ends of the street. Run, Damon said. They sprinted toward the tattoo parlor, but the door was already opening. 2 armed men stepped out, cutting off that escape. Damon grabbed Ariana and pulled her toward a narrow gap between buildings. They squeezed through just as the first shots rang out, bullets sparking off the brick walls behind them. They emerged in a parking lot. Damon spotted a chain-link fence and pushed Ariana toward it. Climb! She scrambled up the fence, her fingers gripping the metal, her feet finding purchase. Damon was right behind her. More shots. She heard one whistle past her ear. They dropped down on the other side and kept running. Behind them, their pursuers were shouting, coordinating. There, Ariana gasped, pointing at a construction site ahead. They ducked inside, navigating through stacks of lumber and half-built walls. The structure was a maze of wood frames and exposed beams. Damon found a spot behind some equipment and pulled Ariana down beside him. They crouched in the shadows, trying to control their breathing. Footsteps echoed through the construction site. At least 4 men, maybe more, spreading out to search. We can't keep running, Ariana whispered. There's too many of them. I know. Damon checked his weapon. Limited ammunition. Not enough for a prolonged fight. Stay behind me. When I move, you move. Understand? Before Ariana could answer, a voice called out from somewhere in the darkness. Cade, we know you're in here. Make this easy on yourself. Send out the girl, and maybe we'll let you walk away. Damon didn't respond. His eyes scanned the space, looking for an advantage. Come on, man, the voice continued. It was Rylan Cross. You're former military. You know how this ends. You're outnumbered, outgunned. There's no win here for you. Ariana's hand found Damon's arm. She could feel the tension in him, the calculation happening behind his eyes. The girl's not part of this, Rylan said. She's just a confused woman who got mixed up with the wrong guy. We'll take care of her. Get her help. But you? You're done either way. Choose how. Damon finally spoke, his voice carrying through the construction site. You really believe that? That Evan's going to take care of her? Or are you just telling yourself that so you can sleep at night? A pause. What I believe doesn't matter. I got a job to do. Yeah, and that job is murdering an innocent woman whose only crime was escaping a human trafficker. Real honorable work there, Cross. She's been brainwashed. She needs help. She released the evidence an hour ago, Damon interrupted. Everything. Every crime. Every victim. It's all over the internet right now. The whole world knows what the Whitlocks are. So ask yourself, what exactly are you protecting? Another pause, longer this time. Doesn't matter, Rylan said finally, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Money's money, and I've been paid to bring you both down. Then come get us, Damon challenged. The construction site exploded with movement. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Ariana's heart hammered as Damon pulled her deeper into the shadows. They moved through the skeleton of the building, Damon guiding them toward what looked like a back exit. Behind them, the mercenaries were getting closer, their coordinated search tightening the net. Then Ariana saw it, a pile of lumber near a window opening. If they could reach it, they might be able to push it down, create a distraction, maybe even block their pursuers. Damon, she whispered, pointing. He saw what she was thinking immediately. Can you reach it? I think so. Go. I'll cover you. Ariana moved, staying low, her heart pounding so hard she thought the mercenaries must be able to hear it. She reached the pile of lumber and started pushing. The board shifted, groaning. A flashlight beam swept toward her. There! Damon stepped out from cover and fired 3 shots. The flashlight went out with a shout of pain. Return fire echoed through the space, bullets thudding into wood and concrete. Ariana shoved harder on the lumber. The pile tipped, then cascaded down through the window opening with a tremendous crash. The boards hit something below. A car alarm started wailing, adding to the chaos. "Move!" Damon grabbed her hand, and they ran for the back exit, using the distraction. They burst out into the night air and found themselves facing a wire fence. Beyond it, a residential neighborhood. Damon boosted Ariana up, and she scrambled over, dropping down on the other side. He followed quickly. Behind them, the mercenaries were shouting, trying to navigate around the lumber blockade. Damon and Ariana ran through backyards, jumped a hedge, cut across a children's playground. Finally, breathless and exhausted, they ducked behind a garage in an alley. Damon's shoulder was bleeding. Ariana hadn't noticed before, but a bullet had grazed him. "You're hit," she said. "It's nothing, just a graze." But his face was pale. "We need to stop the bleeding." Ariana pulled off her jacket and pressed it against his shoulder. Her hands were shaking, but she kept pressure on the wound like she'd seen in movies. "You did good back there," Damon said, wincing. "With the lumber. Quick thinking again. I'm learning from the best." Despite everything, he smiled. "Your father would be really proud of you right now. You know that." Tears stung Ariana's eyes. "I hope so." They sat in silence for a moment, catching their breath. Then Damon's phone buzzed. He checked it with his good arm. "It's Ghost again. Says law enforcement is finally responding to the evidence dump. FBI's opening an investigation. Warrants are being issued for Evan and Richard Whitlock." "That's good, right?" "It's a start. But warrants don't mean arrests, especially when the targets have money and connections." He pocketed the phone. "We need to get somewhere safe until the FBI can actually bring them in." "Where?" "I've got one more card to play." Damon pulled out his phone again and made a call. "Reaper?" "Yeah, it's Damon. I need a favor. A big one." 20 minutes later, the sound of motorcycles filled the alley. For bikes pulled in, their riders wearing leather vests with familiar patches. The same club Damon had belonged to years ago. The lead rider pulled off his helmet, revealing a weathered face and gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Heard you were in trouble, brother." "Reaper," Damon said, relief evident in his voice. "Thanks for coming. You left the club the right way. With honor. That counts for something." Reaper looked at Ariana. "This her? The one who took on the Whitlocks?" "This is Ariana Brooks," Damon confirmed. Reaper extended his hand. "Mom, your father did right by our brother here. We owe him. We owe you." More bikes arrived, 8 then 12 then 20. Men and women, all wearing the club's colors, all ready to help. "The Whitlocks used our club for their dirty work years ago," Reaper explained. "Made us accomplices without us knowing. When we found out, we wanted blood. But there was nothing we could do. They had too much protection, too much power." He smiled grimly. "But now they're exposed. Now they're vulnerable. And we protect our own." Damon looked at his old brothers and sisters, emotion clear on his face. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just let us help." Reaper gestured to the group. "We're setting up a perimeter around you two. Nobody gets close without going through us first. You need to heal up, rest, and let the law do its job. We'll make sure you survive long enough for that to happen." Ariana felt tears streaming down her face. After days of running, of fear, of being hunted, here was an army of strangers offering protection, offering hope. "Thank you," she whispered. Reaper nodded. "Your father saved one of ours. Now we return the favor." As the bikers organized their protective formation, Ariana's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but she knew immediately who it was. Tessa had sent another coded message through their old college account. "Mrs. Patterson canceled class." Translation: "The danger's over." Or at least beginning to be. Ariana showed it to Damon. He read it, and some of the tension left his shoulders. "Your friend's saying the heat's coming off. Evan must be scrambling to deal with the fallout instead of hunting us. So we're safe. Safer. Not safe yet." He looked at the bikers surrounding them. "But we've got backup now. Real backup." That night, protected by 24 motorcycles and the men and women who rode them, Ariana finally let herself feel something other than terror. She felt hope. The evidence was out. The truth was spreading. And Evan Whitlock's empire was beginning to crumble. They weren't finished yet. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Ariana believed they might actually survive it. "What happens now?" she asked Damon. He was getting his shoulder properly bandaged by one of the bikers who'd apparently been a combat medic. "Now we wait for the FBI to do their job. We give testimony. We make sure every single person the Whitlocks hurt gets justice. And Evan's done. Even if he runs, even if he hides, his life, as he knew it, is over. The money's frozen. The foundation's shut down. His name is poison." Damon met her eyes. "You beat him, Ariana. You and your father. You won." Ariana touched her father's pendant under her shirt. "We're not done yet. Not until Evan's in handcuffs." "No," Damon agreed. "Not until then." But they were close. So close she could almost feel it. The dawn was coming. And with it, justice. 3 days after the evidence dropped, the world looked different. News channels ran continuous coverage of the Whitlock scandal. Federal agents raided the foundation offices. Bank accounts were frozen. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the family they'd once courted. And Ariana Brooks, the runaway bride who'd exposed it all, sat in a protected safe house coordinating with the FBI. Damon's shoulder was healing, though he still winced when he moved too quickly. The bikers had set up a rotating watch outside, making sure no one got close. Reaper personally delivered meals and updates from the outside world. "Richard Whitlock turned himself in this morning," Reaper said, setting down a bag of takeout. "Apparently figured jail was safer than running. His lawyers are already working on a plea deal." "And Evan?" Ariana asked. Reaper's expression darkened. "Still in the wind. Nobody's seen him since the story broke. Could be anywhere." That worried Ariana more than anything. Evan was smart, calculating. He wouldn't just disappear without a plan. Her phone rang. FBI agent Sarah Mitchell, the woman heading the investigation. "Miss Brooks, we need you and Mr. Cade to come in for official statements tomorrow. The federal prosecutor wants to build the strongest case possible." "We'll be there," Ariana confirmed. "And Miss Brooks? Your mother's safe. We've moved her to protective custody. Evan can't use her as leverage anymore." Relief flooded through Ariana. "Thank you. Can I talk to her?" "Soon. Right now, we're keeping all communications limited for security. But she knows you're safe. She knows what you did." After the call ended, Ariana found Damon checking the windows, old habits still strong. "FBI wants statements tomorrow," she said. "This is really happening. We're going to testify. Evan's going to prison. If they catch him first." Damon turned to face her. "Man like Evan doesn't go down easy. He's got resources we don't know about. Escape routes planned years in advance. So what do? We give our statements. We make sure the case is airtight. And we stay alert until Evan's in custody." That night, Ariana couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the women in those video testimonies. The lives destroyed. The families torn apart. All because the Whitlocks believed their wealth put them above consequences. Her father had tried to stop them. Had died trying. Now, she had to finish it. Around midnight, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You took everything from me. It's only fair I return the favor. Come alone to the address below, or everyone you love dies. You have 2 hours." The message included coordinates to a location outside the city. Ariana's blood ran cold. Evan. She should wake Damon. Should call the FBI. Should let the professionals handle this. But the message was clear. Come alone. If she brought anyone, people would die. Her mother. Tessa. Maybe even Damon. She looked at Damon, sleeping on the couch, his injured shoulder bandaged. He'd risked everything for her. She couldn't put him in more danger. Quietly, Ariana grabbed her jacket and slipped out through the bathroom window, avoiding the bikers out front. She felt guilty for it, but she couldn't let Evan hurt anyone else because of her. She hot-wired a car parked down the street. Damon had taught her how, just in case, and drove toward the coordinates. They led to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Ariana's hands shook on the steering wheel, but she kept driving. This ended tonight, one way or another. The industrial complex loomed against the night sky, broken windows like empty eyes watching her approach. Ariana parked and walked toward the main building. every instinct screaming at her to run. But she'd come too far to run now. Inside, emergency lights cast everything in sickly yellow. Her footsteps echoed on concrete floors. Then she saw him. Evan stood in the center of a large warehouse space, looking nothing like the polished philanthropist she'd known. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair uncombed. His eyes held a wildness that made her stomach turn. "You came," he said, and his voice was strange, too calm, like he was trying to hold on to control that was slipping away. "You threaten people I love." "Of course I came." "Love." Evan laughed bitterly. "You don't know what that word means. I loved you, Ariana. I chose you, groomed you to be perfect, and you threw it all away for what? A washed-up biker and some conspiracy theory." "It wasn't a theory. It was truth, and you know it." Evan's composure cracked. "Truth? You want truth?" "Everything I did for legacy, for family, for building something that mattered." The Whitlock name meant something. Meant power, influence, the ability to shape the world. By trafficking people, by murdering my father. Your father was a problem that needed solving. Evan said it so casually, like discussing the weather. He couldn't mind his own business. Couldn't see that some people are simply meant to rule while others serve. That's the natural order. Ariana felt rage building in her chest. "You're insane. I'm realistic. And you were supposed to be my crowning achievement. The pastor's daughter turned society wife. The perfect cover for expanding operations. But you ruined it. Ruined everything." He pulled out a gun, and Ariana's breath caught. "If I can't have you," Evans said quietly, "nobody will." Before he could raise the weapon, the warehouse exploded with movement. FBI agents poured in from every entrance, flashlights cutting through the darkness, voices shouting commands. "Drop the weapon." "FBI. Evan Spoon, confused, betrayed." "You brought them." "I didn't," Ariana said. Then she heard a familiar voice. "But I did." Damon stepped out from behind some equipment, holding up his phone. "You really think I wouldn't notice her sneaking out? I called the FBI the second she left. They've been tracking her phone this whole time." Agent Mitchell appeared, weapon drawn. "Evan Whitlock, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, murder, and about 50 other charges." Evan looked at the agents surrounding him, at Ariana, at the ruins of everything he'd built. For a moment, she thought he might fight, might force them to shoot him. Instead, he dropped the gun and raised his hands. The wild look in his eyes faded into something empty. Defeated. As agents cuffed him and read his rights, Evan looked at Ariana one last time. "I could have given you everything. You could have given me nothing but pain," Ariana said firmly. "My father tried to stop you, and I finished what he started. That's his legacy, not yours." They dragged Evan away. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just walked like a man who'd finally realized he'd lost. Agent Mitchell approached Ariana. "That was incredibly stupid, coming here alone. I know, but I couldn't risk anyone else getting hurt." "Well, it worked out. We've got him on tape threatening you, confessing to your father's murder. Combined with all the evidence you released, he'll never see the outside of a prison cell." Mitchell smiled slightly. "You did good work, Miss Brooks. Dangerous, reckless work, but good." Damon walked over, his expression torn between relief and anger. "Don't ever do that again." "I had to. I know why you did it. Doesn't make it less terrifying." He pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of his injured shoulder. "Your father asked me to protect you. Kind of hard to do when you sneak out windows." Ariana hugged him back, finally letting the tension drain away. "I'm sorry, but it's over now. Really over." Outside the warehouse, patrol cars lined the street, their lights painting everything red and blue. Officers were securing the scene. Reaper and several bikers had arrived, having followed the FBI convoy. "Couldn't let you have all the fun," Reaper said, grinning at Ariana. Girl's got steel in her spine. Over the following weeks, the Whitlock empire collapsed completely. Richard Whitlock's plea deal fell apart when prosecutors realized how much evidence existed. Both he and Evan were sentenced to life without parole. Dozens of their associates were arrested. The trafficking network was systematically dismantled. Ariana gave her testimony in front of a grand jury. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, reliving everything, seeing Evan across the courtroom with dead eyes. But every word brought justice closer. Switch resurfaced briefly to testify, then disappeared again into digital anonymity. Ghost sent word through Reaper that the streets were clean, the bounty was dead, and everyone knew the Whitlocks were finished. Tessa met Ariana at a coffee shop 6 weeks after everything ended. They hugged for a long time, both crying. "I'm so sorry," Tessa said. "I should have said something sooner. Should have stopped you from getting engaged." "You did everything you could," Ariana interrupted. "You found Damon. You warned me. You protected my mother. You saved me." They talked for hours, rebuilding their friendship on a foundation of honesty. Ariana's mother was released from protective custody. Their reunion was tearful and healing. Her mother had always known something was wrong with Evan, but hadn't known how to voice it. Now they could grieve properly for the man they'd both lost. Ariana's father, who'd been a hero in ways they were only beginning to understand. 3 months after Evan's arrest, Ariana stood outside her father's church. It had fallen into disrepair since his death, but the community was working to restore it. Damon stood beside her, his shoulder fully healed now. "You gonna reopen it?" he asked. "Maybe. Or maybe start something new. A foundation for trafficking survivors. Something that turns what the Whitlocks did into something that helps people." She looked at him. "I want you to be part of it, if you're willing. Your father gave me a second chance. Seems only right I help give others the same." Damon smiled. "Besides, somebody's got to keep you from running into danger alone." Ariana laughed, the sound feeling foreign after months of fear and fighting. But good. Really good. That evening, she stood alone in her father's old office. His Bible still sat on the desk, worn from years of use. She opened it to where he'd hidden the coordinates that led them to the evidence. Tucked inside was another note she hadn't seen before. Just a few words in his handwriting. "Ariana, if you're reading this, you've already won. I'm so proud of you. Love never fails. Dad." Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the note. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known she'd be the one to finish his work. She walked outside where Damon was waiting. Behind him, Reaper and some of the bikers were helping renovate the church. Tessa was directing volunteers. Her mother was organizing donation boxes. A community coming together. People who'd been strangers now working towards something good. Ariana touched her father's pendant, still hanging around her neck. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We won." The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, testimony in related cases, building the foundation, healing from trauma that would take years to process. But tonight, standing among people she loved and trusted, Ariana Brooks felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. The nightmare was over. The truth had won. And somewhere, she knew her father was proud. She'd finished what he started. She'd exposed the monsters. She'd survived. And now, finally, she could begin to live. If someone you loved was walking into danger disguised as happiness, would you have the courage to destroy their perfect moment to save their life? Like and subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth hiding behind beautiful lies.